This is Breaking Through the Mayhem, the Sightly podcast series, bringing marketing industry leaders together to discuss the ever-shifting media landscape. Learn about the ins and outs of real-time marketing, brand safety, influencers, data privacy, technology, and so much more. All from industry experts with real experience, giving you the real answers. Now, let's break through the mayhem.
Welcome to Sightly's Breaking Through the Mayhem podcast, marketing in a time of constantly shifting risk and opportunity. This is going to be the first episode of all time. And we have the amazing guest, Jason Lee from Horizon Media. Before we jump in, I'm your host, Adam Katz, and we're live here at the Brand Safety Summit for our first ever experience. Jason, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself? I know you for 5 years, but a lot of people here don't know you.
Well, thanks, Adam. I think first I just need to say thank you and congratulations on your first ever podcast. I know this is one that for you and Sightly many have talked about for quite some time. So congrats, and I feel honored being your first guest on the first episode ever. So
I appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
We've come a long way.
Yes. So my role is a newer one. Let me give a quick background of who I am and what I'm doing here at this conference, and I think throughout this industry. So I'm the EVP of Brand Safety and Consumer Advocacy at Horizon Media. Throughout the years, we've obviously, as an industry, talked a lot about brand safety. How do we provide guidance, strategic oversight, and really help our clients and brands to maneuver within this culture of increased information, fragmentation of media, consumers getting information from multiple sources. And how do we help brands break through that to really understand where they should be, what they should be saying, what these messages are, and really how to move their businesses forward in a way that is responsible, respectful, and really puts the consumer mindset in mind and really help protect consumers and brands alike. So this role was created to really be a strategic guidance for clients in that regard.
Wow, that's a lot, right? So you feeling comfortable in the new role already or what?
Absolutely. It's interesting. The role is new, but this is not new to us in the industry, society. I think we all have recognized that there's been a sizable shift in how we consume information, media. We talked a lot about zeitgeists historically, and zeitgeists are multiplying, and there seems to be a different trajectory for different political beliefs and different opinions. And the world has become much more complex, right? So we've dealt with this. We just haven't had a focused effort often in the industry and on the agency side and clients alike that really is dedicated to help clients in this regard. Given the trajectory and then the increase of that complexity, there's really a need for that. So we've all done it. We're leaning in and we're really focusing more on that and putting the resources behind it to really prioritize that.
I love that. In terms of like, what do you consider utopia for a brand to navigate today's speed of culture and the tendency for people to align around their own positions and quickly pass their own judgments?
Sure. I think we need to talk through, I should say, brands are thinking through whether they should actually be a part of that conversation. Historically, it's been a question. Should you or could you lean in and be a part of the conversation? If there's something that's happening in the world, do you lean in and respond to that? Do you hold back? Do you change your creative messaging? That decision for clients and brands historically is now shifting, I think. No longer is it a decision, but it's almost an obligation. It's clients are pulling you in as the world is changing. Sometimes consumers are pulling you in. You talk about the rapid world of social media, and it's not out of the world, not outlandish for a consumer to make a statement about a brand. And at that point, you say, you can't ignore it in many cases, so you have to make the decision of, should I respond, should I lean in? And it's more and more difficult for clients to actually say, I'm going to remain quiet.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you touch on a lot of really, really good points, but I think a big question I would ask you then is, how would your organization go around having those conversations today with brands to figure out the go-to-market strategy? Where do you start? How do you dig deep into those type of conversations to make sure that you understand the stance of a brand to be able to react in today's world?
That is a fantastic question. honestly. Many brands don't even have the answer to that. So I think for we as an agency, what we're doing is taking a step back with clients and really trying to better understand them and have them better understand themselves. So a little bit of self-awareness and really prioritizing in terms of what are your brand pillars, what are your corporate ethos, what is your level of risk or risk adversity overall, what are your priorities as an organization. Many times we talk through brand houses and what the brand stands for and revenue goals, but there isn't always that prioritization of cultural moments or how do you feel about political beliefs? Do you want to have an opinion? Do you want to remain neutral? Clients don't always know that. And quite frankly, even the subjective gets caught up with the objective in many cases. And you might have a CMO with a certain opinion, right? And that might counter that of the brand overall or of your priority, customer base that's driving the highest LTV might, completely disagree with that CMO. And so where does the penny fall in terms of what should you do? So to answer your question more squarely, really step one is having an audit and having a frank conversation with clients to say, what is most important to you in your business? What makes that your business move forward? What is your consumer base? Where do you draw the line? And if X, Y, Z were to happen, how do you react? What do we do? And so really determining on that continuum exactly where your priorities lie and where where you might want to act, right? It's no longer, we have a brand and we have we have a brand and we have a goal with this campaign. The world is bifurcated in such a way where you need to actually lean in and determine what's most important for you.
I agree. And, to make those decisions, obviously, I think we could all agree we don't have all the information yet to do this perfectly.
Absolutely.
But I think we're all yearning to get more and more information to do this better. What information do you feel like you're not getting today that would help you make better decisions for your brands?
That's another good question. I was going to say that what helps us make the best decisions as best as we can is data, information, understanding what's out there in the trades, social media, what others in the industry or consumers are talking through, and really having a better understanding of conversations, themes, trends that are surfacing to the top. Clearly, none of us in the world have a crystal ball, but I think leveraging the data that we have, everything I just mentioned, plus consumer sentiment, social conversation, et cetera, is really the best tool we have to best understand this. Some of that's available now, some of it's not, right? I think what we're trying to do is be less reactive. So don't wait for a situation to occur and be reactive and take that data and say, what should we do? How do we make a decision? We're trying to anticipate these and try to leverage information, understand what that groundswell might be. What are the themes and topics that are increasing, and try to get ahead of it. Try to get responses
and
proactively.
What do you do, Jason, in that situation, in your mind, if you make a mistake?
If we make a mistake?
Yeah,
no, we don't make mistakes.
Listen, I know Horizon Media is the best of the best, but
Right.
how do you reverse course if a mistake is made?
Yeah.
And don't you agree that if the mistake's made, but it sticks to your brand from an authentic and a consistent place, it could actually sometimes help you be a winner?
Yeah,
which is
entirely.
It's like a strange concept.
No,
right?
absolutely,
But it
absolutely.
could turn into a win.
Yeah, and I kid. I think you have to make mistakes, and you will. You have to be accepting that nobody can predict the future, and nobody does everything perfect. And we're operating in a world that's not just complicated and becoming more increasingly complex, right? It's like this vortex of information that on a trajectory that's just like it's not stopping, right? It's been going on for years and years. So the key here is to be flexible and nimble. Understand what your priorities are, what you're try to prepare as best you can. Have your best foundational go to action strategy. Understand your process. Who are you pulling in? What are the data you're using? What are your 5 different options in terms of how you respond or don't respond, and move forward with that.
And what would you say? Maybe a good way to close this out is a discussion around. A lot of people talk a lot about obviously ROI, right? Driving leads and sales.
Sure.
Versus driving awareness, and we still talk about the funnel in an old school way. In my personal opinion, I think that needs to obviously go away. And when you're looking at authenticity and consistency in today's world, it's going to take time to show people you're being meaningful, you care about them and where you're going. So what do you do when a brand's coming to you right now and they're saying, listen, I'm not driving the sales I want, and you're looking at them and you're going, but you're driving the thing you actually want, and that will come
Right.
over time.
Right.
How do you start to balance that conversation?
It's tough. We as an industry are at the relatively nascent stages of doing that. What we will need to consider is that no longer can it only be about dollars and cents, but there's what I would call maybe a cultural or a social currency that we need to consider as well, right? You could have a brand, and we've seen this, you could have a brand that is doing incredibly well. The wrong thing is said or done, and immediately cancel culture, people pull back. And even if it's not widely seen and it's all over social media, you could see revenue dip because people would rather go with brand X versus brand Y because they don't believe in the way that brand had actually done something.
And I think one of the challenges is, you and I have had this conversation in the past, is we talk about like the definition of safety, suitability. Obviously, our platform centered around the concept of mentality. I think ultimately the biggest challenge for all of us is like all the definitions are different to pretty much everybody. Do you think it would be helpful if your clients and you had strict definitions that you both agreed upon?
Yeah.
Right? And kind of got to a place where you guys were comfortable with those definitions?
Yeah, I think it's two things. The word definition, we have to define the word definition here. This is the complexity we're talking about. What's important is to have a foundation, a process, a structure from which to make those decisions. The decisions themselves need to ladder up and be customized for an individual brand's needs, right? What are their priorities? Where do they lean? What does this look like? So the definition, it is that. You need that structure to work with, and then customize that for clients overall, and then stick with it. There's a big part of it where we can't be, a brand, an agency, an industry, you can't be flip-flopping. You need to understand the potential, the trajectory, the way that things could go, good or bad. Be able to pivot, but really understand that you're going to take a stand and lean in or not, and really understand what your corporate ethos are and stand behind it.
So I'm going to put you on the spot for a second.
Sure.
One that we have not discussed over time. Who would you say, I'm going to give you three things. Who would you say is a great brand doing this? Who would you say is a great person doing this? And what would you say you've made a decision yourself in your life because of something like this?
That is an incredibly difficult question.
Well, take it as you weigh.
Oh, my Lord. I don't know, to be honest with you. I hate to take the escape from this. No brands come to mind that are doing this perfectly. But again, in the spirit of failure, that's a tough word, but being able to take some failures, learn from it, and grow and improve in the future, some brands are learning to do that better than others, right? Even if we look at Kanye and Adidas and what more recently happened.
How slow they moved to move out of it.
How slow they moved to move out of it. The lack of decision, or the perception of a lack of decision. One could argue that eroded the brand health of Adidas day by day, hour by hour. Without working at Adidas, working with them directly, you got to believe that they learned something from this, and that they're going to evolve their process, their decision process, their strategic, partnerships, or what have you in the future. Because absolutely, they start looking at the data, they see that, right?
Oh, I would say for sure. But and what about in your day to day? Have you made a decision based on your mentality,
with one of our brands, or my day to day,
or for yourself?
I have. Myself personally, yeah. I don't know if I necessarily believe in cancel culture in the way that I work with, brands, or the way that I make purchase decisions or what have you. But I do pay attention to what brands do, how they respond, how they show up in the world. Just like you meet a human being, you have an interview, you go on a date. You understand who that person is, what their energy is, what their background is, and you know what their vision is for the future. Brands are the same. It's all about relationships. And the relationship that we have with the clothes we wear, where we eat, what we shop, what we tag on our Instagram posts, there's brand pride. And that's a representation of us as consumers. For some brands and some people, that's closer than others, right? The way that we associate with those brands. But regardless, even if it's subconscious or inherent, that's a representation of you. So it's important that we understand what our brands stand for and how we go forward. So every day I'm making decisions, I think not always consciously, like where did I get my breakfast sandwich this morning? I'm thinking, well, what did they post last week? I'm not thinking that, but it's a representation, and you want to be in good company.
One of the points you're making, and we'll close out our first Breaking Through the Mayhem podcast with this amazing guest, Jason Lee. I think what you're hearing today is that ultimately, listen, like you don't make decisions consciously on every single move that you make, but the size of the moment, the amount of volume that happens from the moment, and how fast it picks up is ultimately a lot of what we're discussing today. And the ability to bifurcate your risk and opportunity becomes pretty clear. So I think you've given unbelievable information, and I want to thank you for joining me.
Absolutely. Thanks, Adam. And thank you all. I think as we talk through and we all partner in the future, it's incredibly important to make sure that we have the right information and that there's a collaboration, right? To be able to kind of work together as an industry, as partners, to prepare as best as we can in this world.
You the man.
So thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Joe, one of the producers for Sightly's Breaking Through the Mayhem podcast. We want to thank you so much for listening to the show. If you want to learn more about the guests we had on today, we included additional information about them in the show notes. Finally, if you'd like to be on the podcast, or if you know someone that would make a great fit, you can fill out the form at sightly.com/podcast. We hope you have a great day.